Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of Webflail, the podcast dedicated to uncovering the greatest failures behind the greatest Webflowers, because success often comes after learning from many failures. I'm your host, Jack, a failure connoisseur, and today my guest is Julian Kreth, founder of Agentur 2017-20, a data-driven advertising agency based in Germany. It's an honor to have you here, Julian.
Thank you for having me.
Did I pronounce that right? I
Yeah,
definitely didn't.
yeah. Well, Agentur is just the German word for agency, and because it's just this stupid sequence of numbers, we just put the agency in front, or the German Agentur, so people know that we're actually an agency. But we are just in the process of ditching that. So as you can see on the call here, my name is 2017-20.agency. Recently changed our domain. And we are gonna add the domains .design and .media, which kind of foreshadows what we're up to in the future. And I'm very excited about that.
Ooh, okay. I'm sure we'll get into that later in this conversation. And yeah, at the end of the episode, we'll cover some questions that I got sent in on Twitter from people because I was like, "Hey, do you have any questions for Julian?" and things. So we'll get into those in the quick fire community round later. But let's begin by rolling back the years. Can you give a little introduction to people that might not know you about how you got started with creative stuff and eventually, towards your agency?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I was always a very creative kid. At least I like to think about myself like that. So I did music early on, and way back in the days, worked on Minecraft mods and texture packs and all that kind of stuff with my friends. And then during high school, when we had our first computer science classes, I learned HTML, CSS, stuff like that, and I was really interested in that. Started building first kind of very ugly websites back in the days, until I discovered the first website development solutions like WordPress and Wix.com, and I don't know if Squarespace was a thing back then. So I'm just did that just for fun for a really long time, and I think it was during high school actually where I decided I really want to get into the creative industry, and I was looking for a job that could get me there. And after a quick visit in the event management scene, a very very short visit, I then pivoted into creative and digital design, digital marketing, and now for the past 5 years I've been building referral websites for companies and personal projects and stuff like that.
Wow, quite a journey from learning the building blocks of HTML and CSS at school then. And it sounds like you've had a kind of journey towards what the agency is now. And I feel like maybe it's appropriate just to get straight in with the failures, because otherwise we're just gonna step on the failures which you kindly sent me. So tell me about failure number one, where you initially founded an events management company.
Yeah. So when I first when I got into the creative industry, or just got more and more interested in the creative space, I thought, what's something where I can do everything? Because I always struggled with finding the one thing that I should pursue, and I always thought event management, or coming up with events, that's perfect for you. You get the creative side and design. You get to design posters. I can create the website. I can create the online campaign to advertise the event. I can design the event location. So I felt like this is the perfect creative dream job, and I can get this instant gratification because I see how people react, and it just felt like this is perfect. And my uncle used to have an event management company as well, and I kind of saw what he did with smaller festivals, and I thought, this is exactly what I want. This is where I can get the creative juices flowing and just do whatever I want and whatever I feel like. So during high school, actually, I incorporated a company right when I turned 18, 2 or 3 days later, because that's the legal age when you can incorporated company here in Germany, and it was called Oak Festivals. Once because I really liked oak trees, and Oak also stands for open air kino, which is like open air cinema in German. And I thought we had this. I lived in this like small village in Germany, and we had this old castle with a like giant green area that was never been used. And I thought this would be perfect for an open air movie theater. So I added the mayor back then on Facebook because he was very active on Facebook. And I just DM'd him. I was like, hey, my name is Julian. I'm like 18 years old. I live here in the small village. And I think it would be really cool to have like an open air movie theater here. Because we're never using the green area behind the castle and stuff like that. And he was very, very supportive. And he was like, that sounds like a great idea. We should meet. So we met, and then I kind of like tried to like learn everything while I was doing it, because obviously who knows how to manage an open air cinema or how to like come up with that. So I did lots of Googling. I found a movie rental company, and they obviously knew all the process. So I was just like, hey, I have honestly no idea how this whole thing works. Would you be able to help me? And they were also very, very helpful. Like even like very early on, I realized that people are very open to helping you when you're just asked nicely. So they taught me all the legal things that I had to know, and helped me with the whole like setup and everything. They reached out to one of their contacts, so I get like chairs, and they had all the legal paperwork. So I did that, and then I saw the advertising, everything, came up with a little idea for like posters and stuff. And then I wasn't sure if I should do 1 day or 2 days. And I thought 1 day is probably better. But then some people said, well, if it works out, it's better if it's 2 days. So people like the first day is nice, and then people are gonna tell their friends, and then on the second day, their friends are gonna come. So you should really do 2 days. And I knew that if I do 2 days, the financials would be kind of tricky, because it was very hard to go break even, because the green area wasn't that big. The licensing fees were pretty high. So I was like, well, I'll just try. And then I talked to the rental company, and they said, if it doesn't work out, I can cancel after the first day. So I don't have to do the 2 days. I didn't have to pay for 2 days. And I was like, no, that's all right. And then I did the first day, and it was like really nice. There were lots of people there. But then the weather forecast for the second day was rain. And I was like, I'm sure I can probably figure this out. Like, I'm sure I made enough money. But at the same time, I was kind of worried that it's not going to work out. But I decided to just ignore the fact that I might not have enough money. So instead of like actually like sitting down and do the math, I was just like, well, we'll just like try. Because I kind of felt like it's not going to work out, but I didn't want to like believe that it's not going to work out. So I just ran with it. And as it turns out, it didn't have enough money for the second day, and it started raining on the second day. So basically, the first open air movie theater, the very first event, I went into debt to pay for the whole thing, because I just refused to go through the financials, because I didn't want to see the truth. And that was like a big life lesson for me early on, because ever since then, even though I'm not responsible for the financial part of our agency, I want to make sure that I know everything about our financials at all times. I always calculate with like the worst numbers possible, because this very first time when I had like my very first entrepreneurial experience, I just refused to go through the numbers and got into massive debt after just 1 day or 2 days of being self-employed, basically.
Oh my God. Okay. A lot of things to pick apart there. So if anyone is listening to this who's a young Webflower, I feel like one big thing that people struggle with is kind of choosing a path, and they're kind of like, everything's fun and I can do everything when I do this, and and I'll do the design and the strategy and the branding and the copywriting because I just love all of it. And it sounds like what you also learn, apart from the financial side of things, is that you can't do everything, and not every aspect of a job is fun as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. I really thought I could just juggle everything by myself, and I thought I would enjoy it. And I realized that there were so many things that were really not fun. Or were just complicated. Like, I'm not a good designer. I'm a way better developer myself. And I just thought I like design, so I'm just gonna do the design as well. And I think one key point was there that I learned I have talents for some things, and I have passions for other things. And this was a huge like eye-opening experience for me to realize just because I'm passionate about design, I like to look at design, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm a good designer. And to kind of like talk about the future, or like what we did in the future, was that with the agency right now, we focused a lot more on development very early on before we started the design, because we realized that's where our strength actually is.
That makes so much sense. And to someone that's trying to work out what they're talented at versus what they're passionate at, you might enjoy something but not be very good at it at the start. So it's kind of hard to see whether you're talented or not unless you've put a ton of effort in. What would be your advice to someone that's trying to work out whether they maybe prefer design, but they're not as talented as development, but that's what they want to do? Do you see what I'm trying to ask? I think I garbled that question.
Peter Thiel always asked the question, what is one thing where you think your opinion is different than the mainstream opinion? And I am a big believer that following your passion isn't the best way, because if you make your passion your work, you very quickly reach a point where you lose the passion because it becomes work. And then let's say you're passionate about design, and then you have like 3 awful clients in a row, and all of a sudden you lose the joy in working on the design. So I don't necessarily think that choosing your passion as a career is the best approach. However, to get back to your question about how do you figure that out, I think you said it really well. If you spend a lot of time on something and it doesn't feel like you're spending a lot of time on it, then you realize, okay, this is something that I'm probably good at, because I can be passionate, but it can still be a very slow process to get better at designing. When at the same time I like development, and while learning development, it didn't feel like I'm spending a lot of time. It all went very fairly quick, and it was fairly easy going. So that's when I realized, oh, maybe I myself should focus on the development, even though I like the design part. The better balance for me was to go into the development.
That makes a lot of sense. And in terms of the financials, then, I mean, you talked about having a close eye on your agency's finances, even though that's not your responsibility. A lot of people that watch this or listen to this podcast probably are freelancers rather than agency owners. So how do you think Webflowers should manage their money? How often do you think they should check in with an accountant, or do you have any kind of guidelines as to how to manage that better?
Yeah, you brought up one good thing. How often should you check up with your accountant? I learned that accountants don't necessarily always really consult you. A lot of times you just provide them the information, they work with those. So I had lots of fairly bad experiences with accountants as well. So for me, my learning was to just get financially literate, like just understand the basics. There are great books out there like LLCs for Dummies, which is a great book. Like there are so many things like bookkeeping and accounting for small business owners or for LLCs, just to like get financially literate and learn about like the basics about like taxes and stuff like that. That was a very important step for me. And then also, I think for new people, that's something that they probably don't know from the get-go. Everyone else that's kind of experienced and already knows that. Never calculate with the amount you get paid. Always just calculate with like 50% of it, because there are taxes, then there are unexpected payments for whatever. legal payments or whatever you can think of. So I never look at the money that I receive. I always look at 50% of the money that I receive and then work from there. And then I'm trying to build some retainer work for all my basic costs. So I know I have like a base level of costs every single month. And our goal at the agency very early on was to get enough retainers just to cover our basic costs. So we are fine. So we don't have to like think about it and struggle with like paying our bills. And then everything on top was then we calculate with 50%. We put aside like 50% of that. So like 25% of new projects we just saved for like future whatever we wanted to do with it. Good things or bad things, like if you have get builds or if you want to just buy better computers or whatever. And then the other 25%, we were kind of like just having fun with it, like actually just considering 25% of our new revenue as actual like profit after all the costs, obviously.
Great. So there are two big lessons for young freelancers there to not look at the money that you get paid, but to look at half of it, because a lot of it's going to be taxes. It's going to go probably to Stripe a little bit of that percentage and all sorts of different ways that money is going to leak. So calculating 50% is a really good rule. And then working out the base level of costs that you need to cover in order to be a freelancer. And I assume factoring that into every single invoice that you send out to clients, because otherwise you are going to get steamrolled by the tax man at the end of the year, as I found out last year. Very important advice there, Julian. Thank you for sharing that. Speaking of getting steamrolled by clients, tell me about failure number 2. Failing to set boundaries because you gave unlimited reviews.
I think that's a huge one. And I think every single freelancer, every single creative was at that point early on in their career where you don't say no. You never say no because you need the money, you need the extra case study, and you can't really say no because you really you're kind of dependent on your client. And it was not just the first client, it was like the first couple of Webflow clients or like clients in general, where we thought the client is the king, the customer is king, and everything is single thing they want, they should get. And we thought if we never charge them more, they're gonna like us so much that they will never work with a different agency because we are cheaper. And in theory, that might work. But yeah, if you're cheaper, the client will keep working with you rather than other agencies or other freelancers. There are only a couple of problems that come with that. First off, you attract the clients that are very money driven and they are looking for cheap. And those people usually are not looking for cheap because they don't want to spend money. They are probably looking for cheap because they don't have more money. The problem with that is for them, this is a huge investment. So even though you're trying to be cheap, in their mind, they're investing a lot of money in you. So they want to know everything. They want to make sure that everything is perfect. They want to be involved in the whole process, and their level of trust in you is very, very low. So by only shooting for like the cheap the clients that are looking for cheap agencies, only for like the clients that are willing to only work with people that charge less, you get the clients that tend to be the ones that are most demanding. And we realized that a year or two after we started the agency that when we got our first client that paid us big bucks, that for some reason they didn't want to be involved in the project as much. They were far less demanding. They were okay when we couldn't deliver something on the deadline because there were some issues involved in the project. So this was a really big thing that we realized the clients that don't pay us as much are far more demanding. And that was like a huge problem with us. Plus, we also, I'm getting a little sidetracked here. I ran to the clients that paid not enough. Basically, what happened was when we didn't want to lose those clients, and we would accept every single review, we also started to make mistakes, because first we couldn't deliver on the deadline anymore, and since we let them in the project so early on, they had like new ideas, and then they didn't like the ideas again, and they scrapped the first design. So not only we didn't get as much paid to begin with, we also had to work like so much more with those clients, because they had review after review after review, new ideas that they wanted us to try out, and they didn't like them. And at one point, all this like back and forth made them think that we are not professional, and they started doubting us. They were like, why do we have so many reviews? And they didn't understand the reason why we had so many reviews was because they wanted to try out so many different things. So in the end, they just had a very unpleasant experience, when all we wanted to provide for them was a very pleasant experience, an experience where they can just ask for reviews as much as they wanted. So now we still offer clients a pretty loose number of reviews. We just make sure that we set for like very clear boundaries when it comes to reviews. Once something is approved, we don't change it anymore because it already got approved. We are happy to provide another version of it, but we don't change things on like the final project. And I think that really helped to give them a clear structure and a way better customer experience.
Corey Moen talks about this, where essentially the client process is a bit like leading a horse to the water, right? And obviously the water is the destination, but you need to guide that horse to the destination. If you run or a canter with them, they might trip up, you might fall, and you might go the wrong way or whatever. But the point is that you need to guide the client just like a horse to the water. And even if you think you can see the water, it might be a mirage. Like, trying to overly please the client by saying, yeah, you're right, client, we could try this, actually is, in the long run, maybe kind of misleading, because you're not really guiding them so much as just pixel pushing for them and trying things out. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant to say. And I think the reason why I kind of like got into this like clients that don't pay enough like area is because the bigger clients, they usually don't even ask for that. They know that this is impossible to deliver. So that's why I kind of like went into this like clients that don't pay enough, because those are usually the ones that also ask for these kind of things.
Would you not say though that when you're starting out, like you said at the start of this whole thing, you're taking any clients that come and you're just like, yay, work, portfolio, great, because work leads to work. So what would your advice be to people that are starting out? They're getting cheaper clients because they're at the start of their journey, and cheaper clients may be more willing to take a risk to pay less for a designer to do their work. But you're trying to work out the process. You maybe don't have everything so tightened up as a freelancer. So, should you take on cheap clients at the start of your Webflow journey, in your opinion?
We actually thought about that a lot. And that's kind of why I don't think I ever told about that publicly. We stopped creating websites for 2 years because with this first failure, we were so scared that we're gonna destroy our whole brand that we didn't know what to do. We knew we can only take the cheap Webflow clients because our skill level wasn't quite there yet to work with like bigger clients, and we also didn't have any case studies. But then also we didn't want to take the cheaper clients because we were scared that this would happen again. So the solution that we kind of came up with was that we worked on dozens of fake projects. So we would come up with dozens of fake clients. We would just go through the internet and try to find websites that we thought didn't look good and that we thought we could improve. And we just did it. And we did that definitely dozens of times. And we then just built our portfolio like that. We redesigned websites that we thought could use a redesign, changed the name, the imagery, and the text, and then put that up on our portfolio and use that to then get more clients. And at one point, we had this genius idea that we would just offer those companies whose website we just had redesigned as like kind of to learn Webflow and also to get better at it. We just offered them the finished product and we explained it to them. We were very open about it. If you go on our website, it says that our goal is to be the most transparent agency in the world. And we were very open about it. We told them, here, this is what we did. We redesigned your website because we thought it could use a redesign. Here was our thought process. And if you're interested, we are very happy to sell you this design for like, it was very low prices. It was still like $500, $1,000, $2,500. So we were still doing the low prices, but we were kind of eliminating this like process that we were so scared of. And I would say like 10% of the companies actually ended up buying the new website from us after it was already created, maybe a little more. And then after we had built this portfolio, then we got the bigger clients, and then we were like very strict about it. We were also a lot more confident because the clients that approached us, they already had a budget in mind. So they were like, okay, we have 10 grand for the website. Are you able to work on with that? Or could you provide us with a proposal? And then we wouldn't include any reviews. And then they asked, could we have 2 reviews or could we have 3 reviews? So we kind of learned with the clients that already knew the process because they came to us with like the amount of reviews they wanted to have with their budget. And this was like the way that we tackled the whole situation.
That's so interesting. So essentially, you just said, we're not taking any cheap clients, but what we're going to do is make sure that the big clients come to us by having a really strong portfolio that essentially puts a stake in the ground and says, we know Webflow and we can really help you. But in the meantime, you were actually creating fake websites, but they were redesigns for actual people out there. And then you tried to sell those websites.
Yes.
That's really, I haven't heard that tactic. That's genius. If there are any young Webflowers watching who are like, I don't know how to, build my portfolio and I want to stop working with Auntie Sue or whatever, maybe that's a good approach. Maybe try that out. It seems to have worked quite well for you. But having said that, Julian, you actually had a different income stream at the time from your core skill set at the time, which is your agency, which is maybe doing campaigns for people, marketing campaigns and things. So I guess you did have something to lean back on anyway.
Yeah, we definitely had something to lean back on. However, once that's why in the beginning we never sold the websites that we worked on. But then once we figured out, wait, we are already putting in the work. The websites actually brought in enough to be able to live as like a freelancer, for example. I would say we made like anywhere between 2 and 4 grand a month with those like websites that the client didn't know that they were our client until the project was finished.
Interesting. And so what you're doing now is you are getting people who say, hey, we need a website, but we also want you to implement campaigns on them. So would you be doing maybe a redesign of their current site, redesign, rebuild, and then actually run campaigns for them on a retainer base? Have I understood that correctly?
Yeah, it usually tends to start the other way around, we get a new client and we kind of audit their current website, and then we see some opportunities to increase the performance of our campaigns. And it usually starts with like the first couple landing pages. Like we sell one landing page that is designed based on like the campaign theme. And then usually from that, we then get asked to maybe do a full rework of the website, a full redesign. And also, obviously, within the years, we build a network and we kind of build a brand in our area. So people just know, okay, this is a digital agency. And then they just approach us and ask us if we do websites as well.
Okay, so you've already got the depth of network to be able to have a reputation where essentially you can cover whatever they need digitally.
Yes.
Interesting. And to circle back to how this failure initially started. Sorry, I get in the weeds and talking about all sorts. Giving unlimited reviews, then, how would you now approach a client that says, "Hey, Julian, we want unlimited reviews. Is that cool with you? Can you do a redesign and we'll just have unlimited reviews?" What would you say to them?
So we say we could do unlimited reviews if they are paid. However, in the past, we learned that giving unlimited reviews really hurts the client agency experience. So we recommend that we structure the project in a way where you are able to give us feedback at all times, and we can then include your feedback into the next sprint and adapt the current design based on your feedback.
Okay, then. So you have a strict agency process which you follow, and that means that you're leading the client through each step. You sign them off. They can't go back on their word. They've signed off on that stage, and then you can keep the project moving forward.
Exactly. And then we give the client a link using, what's that called? Markup. So we always add the Webflow preview link into a markup doc, and then they can always give us feedback on the real website. And then during like a weekly meeting, we talk about their feedback that they marked on the page, and then we give them our opinion about that. So if they say we would like to change it like this, then we're going to be like, oh, we think, well, here's the reason why we designed it in this way. And we would recommend that we leave it like that. And then obviously now we have the track record, like we can tell them that we've been creating campaigns and websites for 5 years now, and our proposals for new design ideas, they are not just like someone's like idea because someone thought it was pretty. They're usually like very data driven, and that usually helps a lot with the negotiation when it comes to like changes.
And you can show them hard data to make them come to this realization that they are hiring you because you are experts. Tell me about failure 3, hiring your first employees.
Yeah, I mean, that happened like down the road. I guess every freelancer at one point thinks if they should start an agency or if they should keep working as a freelancer, maybe build different income streams. And back in the days, Jasper, my co-founder, and I, we were also at the same spot. We were thinking, do we want to build a real agency? That's what we would always call it. Like, do we want to hire people? And then we were very lucky, and throughout like a partnership with a different agency, we got the opportunity to win a couple of clients within a very short time. So we were at the point where we had to hire someone to help us out because we couldn't tackle the work by ourselves anymore. So then obviously never having someone hired before, we're like, okay, what do we do? So we just like created a job offering on like one of those websites. Like there are like thousands of them, and I think each country has their own websites. And we were just looking for like a designer, and we got tons of applications, like probably like 20 different applications. And we were like, that's so weird. Everybody always says it's so hard to find employees. We just got 20 applications. And we thought this is probably because we are like a young agency and everyone wants to work at a young agency. What we really didn't realize, and I have no idea why, I guess maybe because we were so young, was that just because people apply to you doesn't mean that they're good. So we didn't have any like interview process prepared or anything. We were really just going for the vibe. We were like, okay, do we like this person? Like, does this person seem like smart or like witty? Or this was kind of what we are going for. And we were also kind of looking at like their portfolio, but we had no like clear structure in mind. And the first person that we ended up hiring was a visual designer. And what we didn't know was that a visual designer isn't a designer for like web or like graphic design. A visual designer is someone that designs windows in shops. we didn't know that. So we're like, oh, this is perfect. Out of like 20 applicants, there's one that's actually a designer, and she's even a visual designer. We're gonna hire her. Not knowing, not doing any research. We're just happy that there was a designer in all the applications. So we hired her, and within the first couple of weeks, really, we realized she doesn't know how to design. And it seemed like the projects that she showed us were like group efforts, and there were design things involved, but she wasn't responsible for those. And since we had no interview process, we just didn't think about it. We thought, oh, those designs look nice, and then that was it. So this is like kind of the first time we hired someone, and this was like the very first mistake that we made, not knowing how to structure an interview, basically, an interview process. And the problem is that we didn't really learn from that first experience. So I think when you first asked me about my failures, I told you like it was not just like the first hire, it was like the first 6 to 8 hires. And it's not like that we scaled to 8 employees all that quickly. It was 6 to 8 people for one position, because we really made every single mistake that you could make during that first like employee hiring period. We were looking for a friend, not for an employee. So we would like hang out with them all the time, or we would actually hire a friend. That was the first mistake, because the relationship between you and a friend is just like, it changed. It's just like the same reason why I think working at your passion is not ideal, because it can kind of take the joy out of your passion. Working with a friend, unless your friend and you have very clear boundaries and really talk these things through, it's really hard, because all of a sudden there's like a failure of like a power, but there's like a power movement between you guys. Like one is the boss, one has to like listen. This is like something that doesn't really work with friends. We made more mistakes that, because when you like start an agency, you start to be very lonely. We started talking to our employees about our own problems. So they knew so much stuff about us that they quit, because they were like, okay, these people have so many issues, we don't want to work with them anymore. So it was really just like learning how to hire people, because that's something that nobody can teach you. Nobody really prepares you for doing something like that. I guess because it's very rare, like not that many actually do hire people. So we really had to learn with every single hire. We had to work on ourselves, make sure that we learn how to build the correct relationship. You can be friendly, you can have fun together, but you can also have like a very healthy like distance between you, like emotionally. We designed an entire interview process. There was not just one interview, but several interviews. Once we grew bigger, we had other employees interview potential new employees to like see if there's a cultural fit. And I don't think I can really give away like a learning from that, other than it is fucking hard and it is a process. Now I know what I would do better. Like I would first come up with an interview process, probably talk to a different agency owner and ask them how they're doing it. What we're doing now is usually we have not for all positions, but for some, we have like internships, or maybe like just like 2 days or like a week where they work with us and they're getting paid, and we just get to know each other and see if their work is actually like what it looks like in the portfolio. And we can also see how long it takes them to come up with different things. Like if we have a workflow designer, we give them a little design challenge. If we have a developer, we give them a Figma file and ask them to develop that file for us, so we can kind of see how long is that person fast, is that person slow, do they know how to keep a project clear. Once we started working on projects with several people, we had to implement like naming conventions. Do they follow the naming conventions? All these kind of things that were like very like not there in the beginning, and now we like build them and include them into the entire hiring process.
Fascinating. I've got so many questions. Okay, so in terms of your interview process now compared to what it was, it sounds like it's come on a hell of a long way. But talk me through, just give me a kind of overview of what happens when you're hiring for, say, a developer. So, like, first step to step they're hired type thing. Because I feel like a lot of people that might be watching this are, maybe working solo, maybe thinking in the future, I want to start an agency. And there's been a lot of people that have come on Webflower podcast who say that they also messed up hiring. And it seems like a fundamental part of having a successful agency. So you seem to have your shit together, Julian. Now, I know that at the time when you were hiring, you were like, I'm just hiring my mates. But now, what is the process? Just a kind of high level overview.
It varies. It also kind of varies if you're like hire for a senior position or a junior position. But in general, the first thing is we kind of get the application. For Jasper, it's always a red flag when there are like grammar mistakes or anything in the application, because he thinks it's not about not knowing how to write. It's about being like thoughtful and like checking everything you worked on. So unless the portfolio is insane, if there are like huge grammar mistakes or typos in the application, we don't even look at it. Obviously, we reach out to the person and give them feedback. We are very big about giving feedback. So even if we don't hire you, we always tell you why that's the case. And then if the application is good, the portfolio looks good, we invite them for a first interview. That interview can be over Zoom or in person. We don't really care. We just want to get to know the person, and we just have a little bit of small talk, ask them about their expectations, ask them about their like plans, if they want to work at an agency for a little bit and then go to like the company. Obviously, they don't have to tell us anything like that. We always give them a disclaimer, like, you don't have to answer any of the questions. It's just for us to get like a better picture. And we don't mind if we are just like a stop for you. If you tell us, yeah, I just want to gain some experience at an agency for like a year and then maybe start my own agency or something like that, that is totally fine with us. And we are very open about that. We actually talked about that yesterday. I think as of right now, 6 of our former employees started their own agencies, and we are like all for that, and we support them along the entire journey. So once this like first interview is done, where we also ask some like stress questions, just to see how they handle stress. We realize that there's a fit. We kind of vibe with each other. They seem like they're what we're looking for. Then we ask them if they would be willing to either work for us for like a day or two or like a week, and we will pay for that, or if they're looking for like an internship, if we can figure out some sort of solution where we can see how they work and also how they vibe with the team. And we have a hybrid model. We have some people that are remote. We have some people that are work in the office. So just based on the position, that would mean that you either just like join the Zoom calls and somebody is gonna like walk you through everything, or you will be actually physically, in our office. And I think most of the time it ends up being like a 1 or 2 day thing. Sometimes people actually want an internship 1 a week, just so they see if they like it for like an extended period of time, especially when people used to be freelancers and now they join us working for us at the agency. A lot of them are like a little hesitant because they don't know if they would enjoy doing that. But like most of the time, it's just 1 or 2 days. And then they either come to the office or it's online. And then based on the position, like I said, if you're a developer, we will give you a Figma file. Obviously, first of all, we introduce you to the whole team, tell everybody who you are. The team already got a briefing before that. And then they gonna start working for like a day or two. And then if it's a Figma file, we just kind of want to see how quick are you with your Figma file or with your Webflow development. We look at the code and we give them different options in terms of complexity. So in terms of like interactions and animations, just so we know where do you fit. Like, are you a person that's very quick and you can work on the structure of the website, or are you a person that's really good with animation and maybe we will only give you like the animation part of a project. Like, we're kind of trying to figure out where your strengths are, and we also communicate that with you as well, so you know what we're looking for. This is not just about being quick. This is not just about being thoughtful. This is about finding out where your strengths are and where we could put you on a project later on. And then if that's also like a fit and we like the work of the applicant, we usually have a second interview unless the team already gave us feedback that they really like that person. But sometimes maybe the person didn't interact with other people that much because it was like virtual, for example, and they weren't in the office physically. We usually let them have another interview with either a colleague or a future colleague or like a project manager or something like that. It's just so they can ask their questions, their cultural questions, and they can get a feeling for the person as well. And if that person gives us thumbs up as well, then we're pretty much good to go. We let the person know that we would be interested in hiring them. We tell them, or usually we ask them if they have a number in mind. Because if the person can give us like a reason why they're having this number in mind, we are very happy to negotiate and pay more than we initially put on the job. Because I don't know, maybe you live in an expensive city and you tell us, well, I live in this city, so my previous job, I made this much, so I'm kind of looking for that. We are happy to talk about that, but those decisions are made within the team. Because it's very transparent and we want to make sure that everybody knows why everybody is like making a set amount of money. So just over the years, it kind of developed that we are very open about salaries at our agency. And then once that's done, we sign the papers, and then you have like a month of onboarding where you get to know like the tools, you get to know our culture, you work on the first couple of projects, maybe if you have to like learn certain things, certain tools, or like our naming conventions or something like that, we work on that. And then I think after 2 weeks, you start working on the first client projects. And then after 4, you're pretty much independent and just get assigned to the projects and like work with a team on the real projects.
Wow. So there's a hell of a process when people apply. If anyone is watching this thinking of working for Julian, just know that you have a process to get through. But it all sounds like it's not just, it's for your benefit and their benefit, and it sounds like you do treat them like a human, which it's not always the case when agencies are recruiting people. So good for you. I appreciate the transparency, not only showing us the process that you go through, but also it sounds like people who start this process actually really love it and want to work for you afterwards. So that's really, really cool. Let's get into some questions, quick fire questions from the community. I feel like those failures we've covered in detail, and I could talk to you for hours about more drill into a lot of your agency processes, but time is ticking. So we've covered a hell of a lot, but what's the best way to start making a living out of Webflow, in your opinion?
What's the best way of making a living out of Webflow?
Yeah,
I would say the approach that we went, create fake case studies and then go on platforms like Upwork, Wheel of No Code, and all the freelance platforms that are out there, and just start to apply to every single job. And I think that's how you can start making a living, or join your local business club and talk to everybody, network there, and tell everybody that you're happy to help them with their website rework.
Great. Top skill you feel is undervalued for Webflowers?
Structure.
Straight up.
I think in the past couple of years, there were only like less than a handful of projects that I looked at where I was like, wow, this is a very well structured project. And I think this is what most Webflowers lack, having a very clear structure and making it easy for the website to scale and for the marketing team to use the website rather than them having to hire another developer to make any changes.
I feel like a lot of people start Webflow as a designer who wants to make their designs a reality. That's certainly how I came to Webflow. And the more you use it, the more you realize that actually you can't just make things that are cool for cool's sake. Like, you kind of need to understand how websites work.
Yeah.
So how did you develop your design aesthetic?
Dribble and Behance. It was a lot of looking at things that I liked, a lot of mood boards. And then I realized that at one point when I had no guidance, I started designing in a certain way. And that's when I realized, now I found my like kind of aesthetic. But it was a very long process, including lots of mood boards, Pinterest boards, Behance and Dribble, and lots of inspiration, until you realize that you actually have to start doing things to go from the inspiration stage to the doing stage and developing your own design language.
And what does success look like to you?
Free time, not having to work. Success to me is when I wake up in the morning and I know that I'm gonna work on a new fun website project that I came up with, rather than working on something I have to work on.
Great. We've got a question here from Matt. What would be your top tips for discussing retainers with a potential client?
I had a conversation about that literally a couple hours ago, where a client brought that topic up. And if the client brings up the topic, I think it's very, very important to understand where the client is coming from. I'm a big believer in asking questions rather than talk. This is great saying there's a reason why you have 2 ears and just one mouth. And I think the best way is to really ask questions, as many questions as you can, and then tell the client, please give me a day. I'm going to reflect on all your answers, and then I'm going to come back to you with a great proposal that is tied to your needs. Because I think that way you can really deliver what the client is looking for, and you don't have to negotiate anymore. And then it's also just like a thing, do you want to work on a project base, or do you want to work hourly? I'm a fan of giving them sort of credits. I'll give them estimates on how long certain things take me. And then I offer them, okay, let's say a blog article, like adding a blog article to the CMS, that is 1 credit. Creating a new website, a new page based on existing symbols is 3 credits. And then we kind of develop a credit system, and they can just use them or not. And if they don't use them, they can just take them into the next month. This is like at least what worked out for me the best, to just not try to negotiate, just try to figure out where they're coming from. If I'm trying to convince a client to get a retainer, I start asking questions where I know the answer is, I'm gonna need your help. So I'm gonna start questions like, if you have if you create a new campaign, how would you design the landing page? Or do you think you would need help with the landing page? And usually the questions are, yeah, or do you think your design team could just jump into Webflow and just create new pages? And I'm also showing them the danger of just like messing with the Webflow designer, or like if you change one thing, for some reason, like the title of the FAQ is red as well because you wanted it red on the homepage. So I kind of show them that, and then I jump in and be like, hey, I think it would very benefit you if we talk about a retainer. You said you probably have a new bigger campaign once a month. And setting up a landing page at this stage will take me this much hours. So let's just say we set up a retainer. We put it on 6 months. If you realize after 6 months you didn't really use it, that's totally fine. Then we just end it there, and you can just approach me whenever you need anything. And if you realize this is perfect, then we can just continue our work. And also with every single proposal, even if they didn't ask for a retainer, I always add a section about the retainer, how much a general retainer can cost, and what we can do inside a retainer.
Great advice. What project are you currently working on that's really exciting?
The project I just talked about, it's for I think Series B startup from the States, and they were very, very unhappy with our current agency. We kind of jumped in to help out because their agency couldn't deliver what they promised. And that client was very happy with our work, and actually gave us the rest of the project and asked us if we would work on a retainer for them as well. But I can't talk about it yet because I like it.
Ooh, it does sound exciting though. What's the skill you wish you have mastered but haven't yet?
Being organized. I need a project manager, and you can't see my background, but the table over there is cluttered with notes, and I still haven't figured out a good system where I can convince my ADHD brain to just stay organized and just remember things.
I think that's going to be a lifelong task there, but maybe you will master that skill. If you do, let me know. So before I ask you the final question here, where can people find you? And is it all right if people DM you in Twitter if they've got any questions for you or anything like that?
Oh yeah, 100%. I used to be very active on Twitter. I am not right now, but I'm still checking it every day. So my Twitter would be perfect. I can give you the link, and then you can just add it to the show notes or something, because I don't know my username on the top of my head. And also LinkedIn, just my name on LinkedIn, Julian Kreth. And if you just DM me there, I'm pretty responsive there as well. Or just my email, which is julian@201720.de or .agency. Both work.
Great stuff. I've just put Julian's Twitter handle in there, and it will also be in the description of this YouTube video as well. And I'll put it in the podcast notes. So if anyone wants to reach out to Julian, ask him any follow-up questions, you can do that there. Julian, are you ready for the final question?
I am ready for the final question.
Great. What is your next failure going to be?
That's a very good question. I think my next failure is going to be rushing the next step for the agency because I'm getting too impatient. I think a failure that I do all the time is not preparing well enough. And I really tease that we have some things planned with the .design and .media. And it's probably going to be the scaling of the agency and making sure that we don't put too much on our plate. That's probably going to happen, but we'll hopefully not. Fingers crossed.
Okay, well, yeah, you've put this failure out into the open now, so hopefully you'll be actively thinking about it, and it won't happen. But if it does, obviously you are more than welcome to come back on this podcast and talk about it with us. Thanks so much, Julian, for sharing so transparently. Dropped so much knowledge in this episode. Like we said earlier, if you want to message Julian, feel free to do that at Julian Kreth on Twitter. Julian, is there any final words for anyone?
I'm not a man of many words, so just if you ever have any questions, let me know. I love to talk. I love to just schedule like a 30-minute chat session and answer all your questions. I know it's very hard to start your career, but the one thing that helped me was just keep going. Our agency made $500 in revenue per month for an entire year before we had our breakthrough. So even if it seems like maybe you should quit, just do it a little more, a little longer, and it might work out.
And do you mind disclosing kind of roughly what your agency is earning now, from 500 to
100,000 a month?
Shut up. 100,000 a month? Julian, we're going to have to talk about this after the episode. Thanks for everyone watching. Thanks, Mohammed, for putting in some last little bits there. Message Julian on Twitter if you've got any follow-up questions, but I really hope that you guys got as much out of this episode as I did. Until next week, Webflailers. Bye then.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.